After years of quiet life on my family's farm, nestled against a suburban development, I found myself drawn into a battle against the neighborhood's HOA president, Karen Reed. My name is David Chen. My farm, 19 acres of rich soil cultivated by generations, weathered barns standing against time, and animals whose needs dictated my days, was my inheritance, my livelihood, my home. Mr. Chen, that stench from your animals is absolutely unbearable today. It's a public health crisis. It's illegal. It's making me ill. Karen shrieked across my property line, fanning herself dramatically with a gloved hand, as if about to faint from the perceived noxious fumes, even when a cool breeze was blowing gently from the creek. It's violating our property rights. It's lowering our values. The flies are unbearable. My Princess Fluffy Butt can barely breathe. Ms. Reed, it's a farm. It smells like a farm. It's zoned for agriculture, which means these smells are permitted, I replied, my voice calm but firm, standing my ground at the fence line, refusing to be intimidated. Don't you patronize me. I am the president of the Homeowners Association. Your operation is incompatible with a luxury community. It needs to be repurposed for the greater good, she snapped, her eyes narrowed to slits behind designer sunglasses, pointing a manicured finger towards my fields with a gesture of dismissal. A state-of-the-art recreational oasis, an Olympic pool, tennis courts, luxury amenities. Think of the prestige, the property values. Your farm is holding us back. Her greater good was a transparently false cover for her true motive, a lucrative hidden deal with Summit Properties, a large, aggressive developer known for pushing boundaries to acquire desirable land. One sunny morning, pulling my tractor out near the street to access a field on that side of the property, a perfectly routine farm task I'd done for decades, Karen appeared instantly, seemingly materializing from the manicured hedges that bordered. Her property, striding towards me with aggressive purpose, Princess Fluffy Butt clutched protectively in her arms like a furry shield against the perceived grime and noise of my farm equipment. Mr. Chen, you cannot park that hideous, loud eyesore here. HOA bylaws strictly prohibit commercial vehicles and unsightly equipment parked on lots visible from the street. It's an aesthetic violation. It lowers the tone of the neighborhood. It's a farm tractor, Ms. Reed. I'm using it on the farm right now, accessing my fields, I said, stopping the engine, wiping sweat from my brow, trying to remain calm in the face of her irrationality. And this is my farm property, zoned for agricultural use by the county, which explicitly includes using and staging necessary farm equipment on the land. It's parked near the street. It's loud and dirty. It violates aesthetic standards. It's bringing down the look of Blackwood Creek. Move it immediately or face substantial fines, she demanded, her voice rising in pitch, becoming shrill. You can't just leave farm machinery where respectable residents have to look at it. It's temporary. I'm working. This is part of farming. It is a violation if I say it is a violation. I am the president. I interpret the bylaws for the benefit of the community, she shrieked, pulling out her phone to take photos of the tractor from multiple unflattering angles, zooming in on mud on the tires. I'm documenting this violation. You'll receive a formal notice and a fine, farmer. A large one. And I did, a few days later, a formal HOA warning and a preliminary fine for non-conforming vehicle storage, citing a bylaw clearly meant for RVs or boats, not temporary use of necessary farm equipment on agriculturally zoned land. 2 weeks after that direct, chilling threat, the consequences arrived, pushing the conflict into the realm of the truly criminal and utterly insane. It was a sunny afternoon, a Tuesday, and I was working near the road, patching a section of split-rail fence near the entrance to the farm, trying to find a moment of peace and normalcy in the routine work, the sun warm on my back, the smell of cut, grass and earth in the air, trying to forget the tension, when a large, nondescript white van, too clean for a utility vehicle with tinted windows, pulled slowly to a stop at the edge of my property. Magnetic signs on the side read, HOA Compliance Task Force, Rapid Response, and Animal Control and Enforcement Division, Blackwood Creek Estates. They looked vaguely, deliberately official, designed to intimidate, but something about them felt profoundly off. The logo was generic, the font slightly amateurish, the wording overly bold, almost aggressively authoritative, lacking any real badge numbers or official seals that county or state agencies used. Two men in vaguely official-looking, poorly-fitting gray uniforms emerged from the van. They looked like hired thugs playing dress-up, visibly uncomfortable in their roles, but their size and demeanor suggested they were capable of physical intimidation. Their purpose was clear. One carried a clipboard and a handheld radio, the other carried a long, thick, menacing-looking catch-pole used to restrain animals. "David Chen?" The larger of the two men grunted, his voice a low, uneducated growl, devoid of any professional tone, sounding more like a threat than a question. He stepped towards me, holding up a flimsy laminated card that looked suspiciously like something printed at a local copy shop, not official government identification or a law enforcement badge. It was clearly fake. "That's right," I replied, straightening up from the fence work, my hand instinctively going to the worn leather of my belt where I sometimes kept a small multi-tool, my heart rate accelerating, adrenaline flooding my system, a primal sense of alarm, and disbelief seizing me. This couldn't be real. Not this blatant. Not this insane. "We're from HOA Animal Control and Enforcement," the man stated, his eyes scanning my property with a look of open contempt, as if it were a toxic waste dump, not my home, not my life's work. "We have a warrant here, issued by the HOA president, to inspect your livestock operation and seize any and all animals deemed unsanitary, unsafe, or in violation of community standards. Immediate action is required. By executive order of the HOA president." He held up a folded piece of paper that looked vaguely like a legal document but lacked any official court seal, any judge's signature, or any clear jurisdictional authority. It was clearly a fake warrant, a prop in their absurd, terrifying charade, a piece of paper conjured from Karen's delusion of absolute authority. My blood ran cold. This was beyond belief, beyond anything I'd imagined she'd attempt. It was insane. It was criminal. HOA Animal Control and Enforcement? That's not a real agency in this county or state, I stated firmly, trying to keep my voice even despite the tremor in my hands, despite the fear and fury warring inside me. The county handles animal control, and you need a judge-issued court warrant signed by a legitimate judge to seize private property, especially livestock. That paper is fake. You have no authority here. You are trespassing. You are attempting to impersonate public officials. Get off my property immediately." The man sneered, a cruel twist of his lips, arrogance mixed with a dawning, visible unease that he hadn't anticipated such a direct challenge. "Things have changed, farmer. The Homeowners Association has acquired special authority to protect its residents from imminent health hazards. By executive order of the president, we have the right to inspect and seize. By order of President Reed. Step aside. Do not obstruct. We can do this easy or we can do it hard. Your choice." He took a step forward, followed closely by the second man, who shifted the catchpole in his hands, ready to use it, looking towards my pastures where the cattle were grazing, unaware. Their intent was unmistakable and terrifying. They weren't here to inspect. They were here to steal my animals by force, to clear the land on Karen's orders, under the guise of fake authority and a fake warrant. "You do not have any legal authority here," I said firmly, planting my feet on my own land, standing my ground squarely between them and the path leading to my pastures where my cattle were grazing peacefully, unaware of the danger. "You are trespassing. You are attempting to impersonate public officials. You need to leave my property, now, before I call the real police and have you arrested." The first man let out a short, harsh, dismissive laugh, though a flicker of hesitation crossed his eyes, and he glanced nervously towards the main road. "Or what, farmer?" Gonna get your cows to stomp us? Don't be stupid. We're here to do a job. The president wants these animals gone. Today. Don't make it hard on yourself. Step aside. It's easier this way. Don't make us use force. Just then, Karen Reed emerged from her black SUV, which had been parked discreetly down the street, hidden by a large oak tree. Her demeanor shifted instantly from discreet observer to commanding director. She strode purposefully towards them, a triumphant, chillingly malevolent smirk fixed on her face, a look of gleeful anticipation in her eyes, like a villain in a bad movie who thinks they've orchestrated the perfect plan and is about to witness their enemy's defeat, basking in her perceived power and control. "Having trouble, officers?" she asked, addressing the two fake officials with an air of familiar command, as if they were her personal employees, her own private army, paid to do her bidding, her tone sharp with impatience, tapping her foot. "Mr. Chen can be resistant. He doesn't understand the authority of the HOA. He doesn't respect rules. Just remove the animals, all of them. Load them into the van. The court order is pending, of course, but we need to mitigate the public health risks immediately. This is an emergency situation. He's creating a crisis for the whole neighborhood with those diseased animals." You hired these people, Karen?" I demanded, disbelief warring with pure fury, my voice shaking but holding firm. "You dressed them up in these ridiculous uniforms? You're trying to steal my animals? To clear my land using hired thugs pretending to be the police? What is wrong with you? Are you insane?" "I am ensuring the safety and health of the Blackwood Creek community, Mr. Chen," she stated, her voice dripping with false piety, condescension, and absolute certainty. "Your operation is a documented hazard. The HOA board has declared it a public nuisance based on my reports. These officers are simply enforcing necessary standards authorized by me as president. You will comply. You have no choice. The animals will be gone. The land will be cleared. It's for the greater good." She gestured dismissively towards me with her hand, as if I were a piece of refuse blocking the sidewalk, someone beneath her notice, an inconvenience to be swept away by her command. "I'm calling the real police." "Go right ahead, farmer." I ignored her, speaking quickly and clearly to the 911 dispatcher, my voice now firm with a desperate urgency, cutting through Karen's escalating volume. "Yes, I need police assistance at my farm immediately." "What are you waiting for? He's bluffing. He has no authority here. This is my property line. Get the animals. We need to secure the property before sunset. I'm paying you handsomely for this." "You will do as I say. Don't be intimidated by him. He's just a farmer. I have authority over him." Ma'am," the larger fake officer stammered, his eyes wide with alarm, peering down the street, his voice low and shaky. "If the real cops show up, this gets complicated. This wasn't supposed to involve actual law enforcement getting involved. You said this was all cleared. You said the HOA had it covered. This is bad. We could get arrested." "Complicated?" Karen shrieked, her face turning a dangerous shade of purple, veins visibly throbbing on her temples, her voice reaching a fever pitch of pure, entitled rage. She advanced on them, her voice rising to a furious scream. "I hired you to do a job, a simple asset recovery. You have HOA authority. I am the president. You follow my orders. You are under my direct supervision and authority. You will not fail me. I need those animals gone now. Get moving. Don't just stand there like incompetent fools." Within what felt like seconds, two marked county patrol cars, their lights flashing silently, efficiently, screeched to a halt on the road behind Karen's SUV. "Step away from the fence, everyone! Identify yourselves," the senior officer commanded, his voice calm, clear, and firm, cutting through the palpable tension and Karen's rapidly escalating fury. His gaze swept over the scene, his eyes lingering briefly on the absurdly official-looking HOA Compliance Task Force patches on the two men's shoulders, a look of experienced incredulity mixing with concern. "Finally!" Karen shrieked, her fury momentarily replaced by a look of desperate vindication as she rushed forward towards the real officers, assuming they were there to back her up, to enforce her will, to remove me and my animals, to arrest me. These men were helping me enforce community standards. As HOA president, this farmer is obstructing them. He's violating every rule. His animals are a health hazard. They need to be removed immediately. He called you with false information to prevent lawful action. He's the criminal here. Arrest him. He's dangerous. He's resisting official action. The officer raised a skeptical eyebrow, glancing at his partner, Officer Rodriguez, then back at Karen, a look of tired professionalism mixed with growing concern and annoyance on his face. Ma'am, HOA Animal Control and Enforcement is not a recognized agency in this county. We handle animal control, and property disputes don't grant the HOA enforcement powers to illegally seize private property. He turned his attention directly to the two men in gray, his voice turning serious, authoritative. Let's see some legitimate law enforcement or agency identification. Now, state your names and purpose here. Step away from the fence slowly, hands where I can see them. The two men froze, visibly paling further. Their bravado evaporated completely. One stammered, his voice barely audible, trembling. We're not exactly law enforcement. We were hired by her. She said it was legitimate, an HOA thing, just picking up some assets. The other reluctantly, with shaking hands, reached into his pocket and produced a crumpled, suspicious-looking piece of paper that was clearly not official ID, along with a valid driver's license. Hired? The officer repeated, his voice hardening, taking the flimsy authorization document and the driver's license, examining the fake badges. Attempting to impersonate a public servant. That's a felony in this state. Conspiracy to commit a felony, criminal trespass. Potentially grand larceny if you'd actually seized the animals. He looked directly at Karen Reed, his expression hardening further, recognizing her from the 911 call and possibly previous minor complaints filed by other residents about her behavior. And you, ma'am, by hiring these individuals, dressing them in fake uniforms, providing them with fabricated documents, directing them to illegally seize private property, and presenting them as legitimate authority, are facilitating and directing a criminal act. You are instructing them to commit a felony. You are involved in a conspiracy to commit larceny. Criminal? Karen shrieked, her eyes wide with a mixture of genuine, albeit self-serving, shock and outraged entitlement. The reality of the situation, the magnitude of her mistake, the exposure of her elaborate scheme, was finally, brutally, piercing her thick wall of delusion. Her face twisted in disbelief and fury. I did nothing criminal. I was exercising my authority as HOA president. These men were acting on my behalf. They had authorization from the HOA board. This is a conspiracy against me. He's lying. They're lying. You're all part of it. You can't do this to me. I pay taxes. My husband is a lawyer. This is illegal. You're interfering with HOA business. Your authority as HOA president does not extend to hiring individuals to impersonate county officials or illegally seize private property, ma'am, the officer stated flatly, his patience now visibly exhausted. By her wild denials and accusations, his tone becoming sharper. That is a fundamental misunderstanding of the law. That is not within the purview of any homeowners association, regardless of what fabricated documents you provided. You hired them to perform an illegal act under false pretenses. You are under arrest, Ms. Reed. He nodded to Officer Rodriguez, who moved to secure Karen. No, you can't arrest me, Karen shrieked, her voice reaching a fever pitch of panic and rage. I'm the president. I have rights. I pay your salary. You're making a mistake. This is a setup. This farmer set me up. He framed me. He's the criminal here. He's dealing drugs. He has toxic waste on that farm. He's harboring fugitives. He's the one who should be arrested, not me. Get off of me, she thrashed violently as Officer Rodriguez moved to take her arm, trying to secure her. Ms. Reed, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Officer Rodriguez began calmly, taking hold of her arm, ignoring her wild claims and struggles. "I don't have to remain silent. I'm innocent. This is false arrest. You can't do this. I'll call my lawyers. I know people, important people, senators, governors. You'll regret this. Your careers will be over. You'll be working traffic in the middle of nowhere. I'll have your badges. I'll have your chief's job." Detective Miller, a seasoned investigator with a quiet demeanor and sharp eyes, who had arrived on the scene quietly with the other officers and had been observing the entire chaotic, revealing spectacle from the side, notepad in hand, stepped forward, his face grim. He held a small audio recorder up, ensuring it captured Karen's furious, self-incriminating outburst and subsequent arrest. "Ms. Reed, your statements have been recorded. Based on the attempted illegal seizure, the impersonation of public officials, the evidence gathered regarding previous acts of vandalism and sabotage on this property, witness statements from the hired individuals, and pending investigation into your HOA activities and connections to Summit Properties, you are also being arrested and charged with criminal conspiracy, attempted larceny, impersonation, and related felony charges. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." True to her litigious, relentless, and utterly deluded nature, however, Karen Reed did not back down from her legal war against me. She was out on bond, facing potential felony criminal charges that could send her to prison for years. But her primary focus remained obsessively on the civil lawsuit she had filed against me. The lawsuit, filed weeks before the fake police incident but now proceeding alongside the criminal investigation, was a sprawling, convoluted mess of legal claims, alleging nuisance, property devaluation, intentional infliction of severe emotional distress, hers, of course, supposedly caused by my unreasonable refusal to comply with her demands, my alleged harassment of her, the stress of dealing with the situation I created, and now her false arrest, which she claimed I had orchestrated, and seeking a court order to declare the farm a public nuisance, forcing its sale to the HOA for a predetermined significantly below market price, a price specifically calculated to facilitate her lucrative side deal with Summit Properties. It was a desperate, audacious, and frankly insane attempt to use the legal system as just another weapon in her war, clinging to the hope that a judge and jury would somehow validate her warped reality and force me off my land, ignoring the mountain of evidence against her. The court session for the civil lawsuit was set for 3 months later. It became the unavoidable, tense focal point of Blackwood Creek. The community polarized between those who saw Karen for what she was and those still afraid of her influence or clinging to the dream of the oasis. News of the case, the HOA, President versus the farmer, now with the added sensational layer of alleged criminal conspiracy, attempted theft, and impersonation of police, had spread far beyond the neighborhood and the county, attracting regional and even some national reporters and a courtroom packed with curious observers, including many Blackwood Creek residents who filled the gallery, their faces a mixture of fear, hope, and morbid curiosity, whispering amongst themselves, pointing at the key players, Karen, her lawyers, me, Anya, Greg Reed, who was subpoenaed. I was nervous, the weight of my family's legacy, my home, on my shoulders, but resolute, determined not to let her win. My future depended on it. The trial was held in a large, imposing county courthouse, the atmosphere thick with anticipation and latent tension, like the air before a thunderstorm. The air in the courtroom hummed with unspoken expectations and the weight of the conflict. Karen arrived looking severe, defiant, and utterly convinced of her own victimhood and unwavering rectitude. Despite the looming criminal charges and public scandal, carrying herself with an air of persecuted nobility, as if she were the one being wronged by a vast conspiracy. She was flanked by a formidable phalanx of expensive, impassive lawyers, led by a smooth, arrogant man named Mr. Sterling, who clearly viewed the case as beneath him, but was being paid handsomely to try and salvage his client's crumbling reputation and legal position, a task that looked increasingly impossible with every piece of evidence that surfaced. I sat quietly beside Anya Sharma at the defense table, a picture of calm resilience and quiet strength, my worn hands clasped loosely in front of me, my gaze steady, focused on the task ahead, trusting Anya completely. Anya looked calm, confident, and meticulously prepared, her presence and quiet confidence a solid anchor against the storm Karen brought with her, exchanging quiet, strategic words with me and her junior colleagues, organizing the mountain of evidence we had gathered. Mr. Sterling opened Karen's case with a slick, polished presentation designed to appeal to suburban sensibilities, attempting to paint a picture of Blackwood Creek as a utopian, upscale community under siege, its tranquility, peace, and property values, threatened and destroyed by my primitive, unsanitary, and dangerous farm. He used enlarged photos, close-ups of strategically placed mud puddles, which my hidden cameras had captured Karen creating with a hose days before, distant, unflattering, grainy shots of the barn, ignoring its functional condition and cleanliness, manipulated charts allegedly showing drastic farm-induced property value drops in the development based on cherry-picked data. He called a few residents still loyal or beholden to Karen, or perhaps simply intimidated by her past behavior and reputation, who gave vague, rehearsed complaints about smells and noise, visibly faltering and contradicting themselves under even mild cross-examination from Anya, their fear of Karen palpable in their hesitant answers. Karen herself took the stand as the plaintiff, the centerpiece of her own manufactured drama, ready to deliver her performance as the suffering victim. She swore to tell the truth with a hand that trembled slightly, but her eyes held a hard, unwavering conviction in her own fabricated narrative, a terrifying blend of lies and self-pity. She spoke in a trembling voice, often pausing dramatically for effect, sometimes dabbing at the corners of her eyes with a lace handkerchief, about the unimaginable hardship, the constant torment, the severe mental anguish, the sleepless nights filled with animal sounds and worry, the humiliation, the distress I had caused her and the entire community with my farm's presence. She spun a narrative of constant, unbearable noxious odors that made her physically ill and forced her to stay indoors for days, causing her to miss social events, cancel parties, and reducing her quality of life significantly. Terrifying sounds of the animals at night that robbed her of sleep and caused her anxiety and panic attacks, requiring expensive medication, and an alleged invasion of flies and rodents directly attributable to the farm, a problem my well-maintained farm, with its natural predators like barn owls and stray cats, actually prevented far better than the developed areas which had their own pest issues. She claimed the stress, the alleged nuisance, and my supposed harassment and obstruction of her efforts had led to her needing extensive medical treatment, multiple therapy sessions a week with a specialist in trauma, and several expensive medications for anxiety and sleep disorders. She spoke at length about her tireless, selfless efforts as HOA president to protect the community from this blight, this eyesore, this public health menace, portraying me as a stubborn, unreasonable, and destructive obstacle to progress, luxury, and the community's potential, someone who deliberately flouted rules and disregarded his neighbor's well-being for his own selfish, outdated purposes. She looked directly at the judge and the jury, her eyes wide and pleading, casting herself as the ultimate, wronged victim of a stubborn, difficult farmer and a manipulated system that wasn't upholding her basic rights as a homeowner and community leader. Her testimony was long, rambling, full of increasingly exaggerated and self-pitying claims, punctuated by dramatic sighs, dabbing at dry eyes with a handkerchief, and occasional choked-back sobs that seemed just a little too theatrical to be genuine, a performance designed to elicit sympathy. Anya Sharma's cross-examination of Karen was not loud or aggressive. It was calm, methodical, and utterly devastating in its quiet precision, dismantling Karen's lies with the cold, hard logic of facts and evidence. Each question a carefully placed blow to Karen's fabricated narrative. She didn't raise her voice above a conversational level. She simply laid out the truth, fact by undeniable fact, slowly, relentlessly dismantling Karen's fabricated narrative, piece by piece, exposing the scaffolding of lies beneath her performance, stone by painstaking stone, revealing the true malicious intent. "Ms. Reed," Anya began softly, her voice even, standing a respectful distance from the witness box, holding a thick stack of documents. "You testified at length that Mr. Chen's farm attracts rodents and is unsanitary. However, you are aware, are you not, that Mr. Chen maintains several active colonies of barn owls on his property specifically for natural rodent control, a highly effective and environmentally friendly method, and that his composting practices are designed to minimize odor and pests, practices that meet or exceed county standards? You were informed of this in a letter from Mr. Chen dated, date of David's letter, approx early in conflict, which you received? You have a copy of that letter in your HOA files, do you not?" That's irrelevant to the nuisance. "It doesn't matter what he says he does," Karen snapped, shifting uncomfortably in the witness box, her performative fragility beginning to fray badly under Anya's calm scrutiny, her voice losing its trembling quality and gaining a sharp, defensive edge. "The animals themselves attract them. It's the unsanitary conditions of having so many animals so close to a residential area. The smell is proof. You can't deny the smell. It's overwhelming. It makes me sick." "And you testified about unsanitary conditions and public health hazards," Anya continued, her voice unwavering, glancing at a copy of a county document. "Are you aware that Mr. Chen's farm is subject to regular unannounced inspections by the County Department of Agriculture and that it has consistently received the highest possible marks for cleanliness, animal welfare, and compliance with all relevant regulations over the past 30 years? These inspection reports, Ms. Reed, signed by certified county inspectors, state his farm is well-maintained and poses no health risk. They are here as evidence spanning decades. Do you dispute their findings? Do you believe these county officials, these public servants, are lying in their sworn duty, perhaps in a conspiracy with Mr. Chen?" Anya presented the certified county inspection reports as evidence, displaying a selection of reports spanning years on the large courtroom screen visible to the jury, the judge, and the gallery. "Those inspections are clearly inadequate, biased, corrupt, incompetent. They don't understand modern community living," Karen retorted, her voice rising in pitch, the mask slipping further, a clear flash of her true entitlement, paranoia, and contempt for authority showing. "The county inspectors don't understand our community standards. My standards. They don't live here. They don't have to smell it every day. They don't have to deal with the flies. They're probably getting kickbacks from him or someone. This whole thing is rigged. It's a conspiracy against me to stop my Oasis project. Community standards that you, as HOA president, unilaterally define and enforce, often contradicting county regulations?" Anya asked, her gaze steady, her voice softening slightly, almost sounding sympathetic, which only seemed to infuriate Karen more, as if her suffering wasn't being taken seriously enough, as if her absolute authority and judgment were being questioned by someone she deemed inferior. She stepped closer to the witness box, her voice lowering slightly, but every word clear, precise, and carrying immense weight. "Ms. Reed, you claim this farm is so unsanitary and such an imminent health hazard that it required immediate, drastic intervention. You testified that you hired a compliance team to secure the property, didn't you? Is that why you attempted to seize his animals from his private property without a valid court order or legal authority, using individuals you paid a significant sum to impersonate county officials for that purpose? Was this your idea of community compliance in the face of county reports you found inadequate? Mr. Sterling leaped from his seat, sputtering objections, his face red with frustration and the dawning realization of where this line of questioning was inexorably leading, directly to his client's criminal behavior. Objection! Relevance! Your Honor, this is highly prejudicial and seeks to introduce matters from a pending criminal investigation into a civil nuisance claim. It is improper cross-examination. She is attempting to prejudice the jury against my client based on unrelated criminal matters that have nothing to do with nuisance. Ms. Sharma, approach the bench, the judge said, her voice sharp, her expression grim, her eyes fixed on Karen, who was starting to visibly tremble. At the bench, Anya argued, calmly and logically, that Karen's attempt to use fake police to illegally seize the animals was direct, undeniable evidence of her malicious intent, and that her claims of nuisance were not genuine concerns, but fabricated pretexts. Going directly to the heart of whether the lawsuit itself was filed in good faith or was simply another escalated act of harassment and attempted theft, designed to achieve her ulterior motives and profit from the land. She presented the police report from the incident, the sworn statements from the arrested men admitting Karen hired them for an illegal asset recovery operation promising a large sum, and the clear video footage from my hidden cameras capturing the entire event, including Karen's directives to the men, the attempted forced entry into my shed before they were scared off, and the handover of items, later identified by police as tools consistent with those used in vandalism and sabotage, as Exhibits A, B, C, and D. Anya argued they were crucial to establishing Karen's fraudulent intent in filing the lawsuit itself, proving it was malicious prosecution disguised as a legitimate nuisance claim, a pattern of illegal behavior aimed at acquiring the property through any means necessary, including criminal. The judge, after a tense deliberation, her face grim, her eyes hard, ruled that the line of questioning was highly relevant as evidence of the plaintiff's motive, credibility, or lack thereof, and the underlying malicious intent behind the lawsuit, finding the probative value outweighed the potential prejudice, but again cautioned Anya to keep it focused on proving the malicious intent behind the lawsuit, not to delve excessively into the specific criminal charges themselves, which would be handled separately. Anya returned, her gaze fixed on Karen Reed, who was visibly trembling, her carefully constructed act of victimhood and righteous indignation completely shattering under the relentless pressure of truth and her own damning actions being laid bare in a public forum. Ms. Reed, Anya continued, her voice unwavering, holding up copies of the police report and the booking photos of the two arrested men, displaying the clear video footage of the attempted seizure and Karen's directives on the courtroom screen for everyone to see. You hired these two individuals, dressed them in uniforms resembling county officials, provided them with fabricated documents, and directed them to illegally seize Mr. Chen's animals from his private property without a valid court order or legal authority, correct? You were present, directing them, until the real police arrived and arrested them for impersonation and conspiracy, as the video clearly shows you directing them, and then them being arrested right there on Mr. Chen's property. Is this the compliance team you hired? Karen stammered denials, her face pale, her voice barely a whisper at first, her eyes darting desperately around the courtroom, searching for help, for an escape, for someone to rescue her from the truth. Looking at her lawyers, at the judge, at the ceiling. I hired them to enforce HOA regulations, to secure the property from a public health risk. It was an emergency. The board authorized me. Regulations that do not exist for animal seizure by an HOA, Ms. Reed? Anya countered calmly, stepping closer, her voice laced with quiet, devastating incredulity. Authorization that you fabricated and provided to these men? The HOA board minutes, which are public record, show no such authorization vote. The men you hired, in their sworn statements to police, testified you paid them a large sum for an illegal asset recovery operation, not compliance. You orchestrated this attempted illegal seizure, dressing thugs as police, to clear the land for your Oasis project, didn't you, Ms. Reed? Because Mr. Chen refused to sell? Because you had a significant multi-million-dollar personal financial interest in that land being acquired by Summit Properties? Karen's composure shattered completely. The last vestiges of her carefully maintained control evaporated, replaced by raw panic, fury, and terrifying self-incrimination. She mumbled increasingly incoherent denials, her eyes darting wildly around the courtroom, avoiding Anya's piercing gaze, looking for an escape, a way out of the tightening net of truth and consequences, gripping the edge of the witness box. She fidgeted frantically, wringing her hands, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps, her body trembling visibly. Anya then called Greg Reed as a witness for the defense. Greg, looking drawn, frail, and deeply conflicted, his face etched with pain and shame, walked to the witness stand as if walking to the gallows, his gaze fixed on his hands, avoiding eye contact with Karen, who glared at him from the plaintiff's table. His testimony was quiet, halting, filled with visible pain and reluctance, but devastatingly effective. He testified about Karen's increasing obsession with acquiring my farm, her late-night phone calls, her secret meetings with Summit Properties executives, her escalating erratic, secretive, and manipulative behavior towards him, her bragging about her future wealth and position. And finally, with immense difficulty and visible shame, he testified about finding and secretly copying correspondence, emails, notes, preliminary contracts, financial projections, even spreadsheets and recordings, between Karen and Summit. Properties hidden on a flash drive he found and in a secret compartment in her study. He detailed email discussions about Karen using her position and HOA funds to influence local zoning and land use regulations to favor Summit's development plans, about needing to make the farm less appealing through non-conventional means, explicitly linking to the sabotage incidents and potentially other environmental damage by mentioning discussions about using chemicals or other methods, and chillingly, the explicit details of a private side deal where Karen Reed, the HOA president, would receive a massive financial bonus, a percentage of the development's profits, potentially worth millions of dollars, based on the final sale price of the acquired land, and a high-level executive position at Summit Properties with oversight of community integration and land management, if the HOA, under her control, could acquire the farm property for Summit's plans, disguised as the legitimate Blackwood Creek Recreational Oasis project. He presented emails where she referred to the HOA project as merely a convenient justification, a front, for acquiring the valuable land for Summit, and others where Summit executives discussed how Karen's enthusiasm and control of the HOA were crucial to their acquisition strategy, how she was a valuable asset who was delivering results, and how important it was to keep the side deal completely confidential from both the HOA residents, the HOA board, and the public, due to its sensitive and potentially illegal nature, warning her about paper trails. The judge, Judge Thompson, a woman who had maintained a stoic, impassive, almost pained expression throughout the increasingly bizarre and dramatic trial, watched Karen Reed's spectacular collapse with a face like granite, her lips pressed into a thin, hard line, her eyes cold and stern. After Karen was forcibly removed, leaving an unnerving silence in her wake, the judge took a deep breath, composed herself, and addressed the court, her voice cold, clear, and utterly definitive. She looked directly at Mr. Sterling and his team, her expression one of profound professional disapproval and disappointment. This court finds unequivocally and emphatically for the defendant, Mr. David Chen, on all counts. The plaintiff's request for injunctive relief, damages, and a court order to force the sale of Mr. Chen's property is denied in its entirety. Mr. Chen is the rightful and lawful owner of his property, and his farming operations are entirely lawful, well-maintained, and pose no threat whatsoever to the community. She then turned her attention to the exposed criminal acts, her voice ringing, with the full authority of the court. Given the compelling testimony and evidence presented throughout this trial, including the plaintiff's admissions on the stand, the testimony regarding attempted impersonation of public officials, and conspiracy to commit illegal seizure of private property, the extensive evidence of vandalism and property damage, and the disturbing evidence of fraudulent use and embezzlement of HOA funds and conspiracy with outside entities for massive personal gain, all of which constitute serious criminal offenses. I am formally referring the full transcript of this trial, along with all evidence presented here today, including all exhibits and witness testimony, to the District Attorney's Office for immediate and thorough criminal investigation and prosecution against Ms. Karen Reed. Furthermore, given the malicious nature of this lawsuit, the plaintiff's abuse of the legal process, and her blatant disregard for the truth and the law, this court will also be imposing significant financial sanctions against the plaintiff, the details of which will be outlined in a separate order. Karen Reed lost.